Immediately pause the stream. Hi. So, recently, animator versus animation things. Alan ended up making a physics video talking about like motion, force, gravity, friction, and of course, like the idea of hyperbolic space and the fact that you can go what happens with the spaghettification, all that stuff. I saw it. Why didn't I make a reaction video talking about it? Sorry. But I might do that later when I've forgotten what it's like and I can rewatch it and then give you a proper analysis of what I think is all the stuff that's happening and stuff. The only thing I can tell you right now is it made me think about time dilating. And it doesn't. The phenomenon you see when, for all scientists out there, and and I mean NASA scientists and literally anyone else working on that stuff, when you have a satellite dish out up in space and you have that atomic clock going, what will happen with your clock is not time dilation, but it's actually the forces that that ship and everything in it are experiencing affecting the clock. Now you say to me, well, gravity was proven to not be a force. That was a dumb statement. Who made that statement? When you go at a certain speed, what happens is you experience a greater amount of force of you being pulled back towards the back of the ship, the back of your car. When you speed up just a little bit, the change in acceleration happens and you are no longer experiencing just one amount of force, but an extra amount of force. And it's almost similar to increasing the amount of gravity. That's because there's no difference. You being pushed by something that is moving forward, you're going to lag behind and you're going to go into the back of your seat. Now, imagine that happens out on space in a satellite dish and stuff, and or these orbiting satellites. Even on the atomic level, even to the point of light itself, you're going at like 10,000 kilometers an hour or something, 10,000 per second. I don't know which one. Don't quote me on that. But the point is, you're going at crazy fast in order to keep your orbit up. And in order to keep yourself up, you also have to use some kind of propulsion, which nowadays it's just ionized propulsion. We just take some energy and use the particles around to go a little bit boost, and then we go fast, and then we are suddenly no longer falling towards the earth, which is great. So we don't end up falling down. The thing is, what is happening is as you're falling down, and you have these peaks and these dips and lifts, is that you have to experience a greater amount of acceleration during those lifts, and as you're falling, you experience a slightly distorted amount of acceleration as you get lower and lower. The motion of you going a certain speed over time You have to understand that, yeah, of course that affects light. It affects how objects interact with light. And the only thing that works with an atomic clock is light interacting with a specific isotope of, was beryllium? Beryllium sphere. Yeah, that stuff. And, but real life. And so they shine the laser on it. It is wiggling at a certain frequency. And guess what happens when you go at certain speeds? The wiggling is different, but also, yeah, the wiggling is different. But also, imagine that you're going a certain distance and the light is shown from this moment here. It bounces off the particle at this moment and then comes back to the collector, the, what do you call it, the sensor, so that they can actually tell how much time has elapsed at this next moment. The faster you go, those distances change. It doesn't matter if it's a very slight fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a second. The fact is that's enough that it makes it so that we have to recalibrate satellites manually all the time, somehow. And we call this phenomenon time dilation. What's really happening is that you're moving the target of where you're shooting your bullet, which is the light. So what's happening is you shoot your light here, it bounces off here, and it comes back to the sensor here, or so. As the object, like I say, as the object starts to move faster and faster, not only is that particle being affected by the force of gravity in a stronger and stronger way, slight drifting and manipulation of its motion. Instead of going like 100 or whatever else, like just more force. Change of acceleration is not always necessary in order to increase the force. Just more speed equals more force. So like the faster you go, the more g-forces you're experiencing. People in planes that are doing dogfights and whatever else, they say they experience a certain large amount of g-forces compared to just regular, and you feel heavier. And so you can understand it and express it or explain it as similar as any force. Although that's not exactly what's happening. It's more like the object behind you is, and you are lagging behind thing. So like your body gets bruised, your bones and everything, all pulled into the back. Your blood vessels might rupture or something. Who knows? You might black out and other stuff. You go faster than that, and you have like stuff squished, like proper squished, pancaking. And on the atomic level with satellite stuff and whatever else, you shrink down to the size of that atom, the beryllium, that it's shining its lights are on. You know that there's something happening to that atom as well. There's no reason you wouldn't come to that conclusion, and yet scientists everywhere simply scream out, crying wolf, or in this case, crying out time dilation, ignoring all other basic general physics that we understand and that still apply. It's not okay. But of course, the other thing that people talk about is the curvature of space-time and how that's supposed to happen. But space-time doesn't curve. That's another video. I probably already made it, or I have to make it again. But yeah, over in those satellites. You're not experiencing time dilation, you're experiencing velocity, mass acceleration, and these different things that are like, if you want to use terminology of space-time dilation, you have to understand that's going to lead other scientists into thinking that the faster you go, the more time you dilate, and the more, like, some different scientists have given me different explanations of what they think is happening. Like, if you go faster, the time is ticking at a different rate, so that there's more time in the speediness that you're going. So you actually, for you, time is slowing down as you're going faster. There's a reason they say that. The faster you go, again, this relates directly to the signals. If you go, let's say that you have there was a twin paradox, and I made a video on that. I may have made it in my previous channel, so I have to make that video again, talking about the twin paradox. Or I could look it up now. Why not look it up now? So it was a TED Talk video. Twin paradox explained, whatever. This video, yeah, this TED Ed video, got it completely backwards and wrong. So what happens in this is you got two people. One of them goes away, and the other one stays on Earth. And you're trying to ask yourself, well, based on relativity, blah blah blah, all these things, and they say stuff like twin paradox, not a paradox, but it's a paradox, or whatever. One sends the signal every year, and based on the speed that they're going, which they say is a certain speed relative to light, 80% or something? I don't know.
In real time, each of the twins agrees to send a burst of light to the other every time a year has passed for them. Unlike other objects, the speed of light is always constant, regardless of an observer's reference frame. A light burst...
Okay, the speed of light is always constant. No. But we'll get to that. Also, the observer's reference frame, the idea is that, let's say you have yourself in a train, you're moving faster along with the train, you don't really experience that much of a difference. But once you start going near the speed of light or whatever else, you want to try to think, like, whatever, let's just put it as it is. Hey, guess what? Light is going at a specific speed. You're going to clock it in as going at that speed no matter how fast you're going. You want to know why? It's because you moving fast has no influence on what the light is doing. If you want to have the light be moving at the different speeds, you got to put it through a liquid or any other object. And guess what happens? It do that. It goes slower and it goes faster. And it goes faster. You got to be moving near the speed of light, or a fraction of the speed of light, or even 1/100th of the speed of light is enough to make it so that the light is now moving forward faster than it normally would under its own power. That's because it's moving in a medium that's able to actually keep it going fast. But you have to have that substance that's moving through be able to push it forward. This happens. But let's get back to this.
Sent from Earth will be measured at the same speed as a light burst sent from the spaceship, regardless of whether it's on its outbound or return trip. So when one twin observes a burst of light, they're measuring how long it took the other twin to experience a year passing, plus how long it took for the light to travel between them. We can track what's happening on a graph. The x-axis marks distance from Earth, and the y-axis tracks the passage of time. From Terra's perspective, her path will simply be a vertical line, with distance equal to 0, and each
I don't know why I
line
make vertical
equivalent
videos, because horizontal videos, you get so much more out of this thing. You're actually able to see what's going on.
to a year as she perceives it. Stella's path will stretch from the same origin to a point 11.5 years in time and 10 light years in distance from Terra, before converging again at 0 distance and 23 years' time. At her first 1-year mark, Terra will send a pulse of light from Earth towards Stella's spaceship. Since light takes a year to travel 1 light year, its path will be a 45-degree diagonal line.
Here's a problem that happened with me starting at whatever, blah blah blah. I don't know what speed they're going.
10 light years away, then return to Earth at the same speed. As they prepare to part ways, the twins wonder what will happen when they're reunited, since a light year is... On their 20th birthday, identical twin astronauts volunteer for an experiment. Terra will remain on Earth, while Stella will board a spaceship. Stella's ship will travel at 86.6% the speed of light.
Okay, so basically, minus 13% the speed of light. Whatever. 86.6% the speed of light. Four-fifths the speed of light. Something like that. Or I should say, what is that? I don't know what the easy fraction of that is, but it's like 6/7 or something, whatever. Maybe. I don't know. Anyway, the point is, yeah, if I was smarter, I'd be able to know this math. Who cares? The point is, remember that they are moving at 0.8 the speed of light. Now let's go back to where they're moving. Here, this is gonna blow your mind.
And over 4 for Stella. By the time Stella...
Hold on.
And 10 light years in distance from Terra, before converging again at 0 distance and 23 years' time. At her first 1-year mark, Terra will send a pulse of light from Earth towards Stella's spaceship. Since light takes a year to travel 1 light year, its path will be a 45-degree diagonal line. And because Stella is traveling away from it, by the time the light catches up to her, over 7 total years will have passed for Terra and over 4 for Stella.
Okay, so as you're moving away from the source of light, because you're already ahead of it, it still has to take time to catch up to you. This is not time dilation. This is just the speed of one thing, the speed of the other thing, compare them, find out where they mate. That's it. There's no time dilation happening. Woo.
Time Stella observes Terra's second burst, she will already be on her return journey.
But this is true, because in order for you to have light move 11 or 10 light years in any direction, it's going to take a certain large amount of time. So that second signal is going to get there, yeah, before you even start coming back, as soon as you start coming back already.
Now, since she's moving towards the source of light, it will take less time to reach her, and she'll observe the bursts more frequently.
This is normal, because it takes less distance for each light beam, obviously, to do that.
Observes Terra aging slowly for the first half of her journey, but aging rapidly during the return half. Meanwhile for Stella, it seems as though Terra, the destination star, and the whole universe are moving around her. And because of length contraction, Stella observes the distance between them shrinking by a factor of 2. This means each leg of the trip will only take about 6 years from Stella's perspective.
Okay, the perspective of you in time and stuff is a whole other ball of wax that I'm not going to get into until I feel like it. But
When she sends the first
Ignore
signal
that,
to
please.
Earth, 2 years will have passed for Terra. Stella will send 4 more light bursts during her outbound journey.
Oh, that's where it
each
comes
one
from? When they send their every year to us? Yeah? Again, oh,
leg of the trip will only take about 6 years from Stella's perspective.
it's not.
When she sends the first signal to Earth, 2 years will have passed for Terra. Stella will send 4 more light bursts during her outbound journey, each one from farther away. By the time Terra observes the first pulse from Stella's inbound journey, over 21 years will have passed for her. For the rest of Stella's return home, Terra receives multiple light bursts each year. Thus, Terra observed Stella aging slowly for about 90% of their 23 years.
No, okay, so here's what's happening with causality. Is that the signals are sent, they take a certain amount of time in order to get to us, that time actually elapses. Yeah. Still, it's not time dilation. If you shrink this down to just a slow-moving object and how that relates, everything's normal. So why would anything happen as you're going faster? The main thing that I think they get confused about is that, yeah, when you're on your return trip, the signals have basically no time at all. The signals basically go faster than you, so clearly all of them will, once you're going back, that's why these signals are like all squunched together in the top. That's why it's all gray like that, or colored, instead of being all spread out. As you're coming back, you're sending the signal, but then it's also going ahead of you each time. And great, and all that. But again, that's just normal trajectory. That's just normal, the way that one speed is compared to another. And as the length is closing, and as they are both moving in the same direction, it takes a certain amount of time for them to do the traveling, and it takes there's no time manipulation happening. The signals that you're experiencing doesn't tell the full story about what's happening with. Also, you can't travel. I don't care what time you experience. Screw that. Every time that a year passes for you, okay, you're going to be sending out that signal, right? Every time that the distance is traversed, same difference. You have to understand that in a year, you're not traveling a light year. You're traveling 0.86 because that's the speed you're going. And I think I made this comparison last time I made this video, and I have to say it again, is that you're not going to get there in 11 years. Who the hell wrote this? I'm sorry, but a basic mathematician will tell you that 11 years divided by 0.86 is not going to be, or 11 light years of distance divided by 0.8 light years speed isn't going to give you, you're going to travel there in what, 6 years? No. What you're going to have to realize is that you're going a fraction slower. It'll take you like 13 or 14 years to get there. You're not going light speed. So every year you travel 0.86 light years of distance. That means there's more increments, not less. So your signals are your math is off, and I don't know how you got that wrong. And I said the same thing in my other video, but it was in the other channel, which is wrong. It's gone. Don't ask me about it. Yeah, unfortunately, this is wrong. But this is an old video. Why would I? It's 4 years old. But it's a TED Talk video. And the problem is, who cares how old the video is? People in the scientific community believe this. Grow up. Do the math again. You're not going to have only 6 signals be sent from you on the spaceship, Stella, to Earth. You're going to have, like I said, I think I did the math and it was like 13 or 14 years. Right? You do the first bit and you're traveling from here to there. You have gone you've gone, let's just do the, please. There we go. This is the speed they're going. Okay. Now let's find out how long it takes. Oh God, I hate you. Where did you get that from? Okay, let's try this again. 0.86 plus 0. I have taken 3 years to go 2.5 light years. 4 years to go 3.4. 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, 8 years. That's wrong notation. That's at 9 years. 10 years, 12 years. Okay, stop being silly. Stop it, get it. It took me is it 12 years? I can't figure this out. How many is in this? But you get it, right? I don't know why this is like so whatever huggy wuggies. The point is that's the speed that you're going. Every year that passes, that's the distance you're going. So in order to go that distance, you have to take the time. So that's how many signals you're actually going to experience. And also, it's going to take long and there's going to be more. But so the frequency of years in the system is not according to what they did the math for, which is disappointing on a vast level, but we're going to, even ignoring that, the fact that the signals are coming back based on what we see, synopsis, they're not moving faster than the speed of light. First of all, they're going a fraction of the speed of light, 0.86. And so, maybe 0.866, who cares? Barely changes anything. The point is, there's no time dilation happening in this scenario. You're not aging faster and faster and faster. or whatever. The signals don't mean anything in regards to the actual time experienced. The signals are of you who is moving the same speed as your signal or similar or lower, and you're noticing the relationship with that, but you're not noticing that there's like actual time, what actually happens.
And aging rapidly during the last 10%.
No, it
This
doesn't.
asymmetry accounts for why the paradox isn't really a paradox. Although each twin witnesses time both speeding up and slowing down for the other,
You're not noticing time speeding up and slowing down for the other. You're noticing signals get to you sooner rather than later, and that has nothing to do with time. Nothing.
sees an even split, while Terra sees Stella aging slowly for most of the time they're apart. This is consistent with each twin's measurement of the space voyage, which takes 23 Earth years, but only
What time? How long did I say? I forget. Doesn't matter.
11.5 as experienced aboard the ship. When the twins are reunited,
Hold on.
This is consistent with each twin's measurement of the space voyage, which takes 23 Earth years, but only 11.5 as experienced aboard the ship. When the
Okay, the whole experience aboard the ship thing. I'm gonna want to either hand wave it or simply say there is no change of time experienced by people going faster than the speed of light, or as fast close to the speed of light, 86% the speed of light, whatever. You're not experiencing it any differently.
twins are reunited, Terra will be 43 years old, while Stella will be 31. Where Stella went wrong.
So the fascinating subject is that now we're saying it's not just that they experienced, but also that the actual amount of time that took place isn't 23 years, but it's actually less for Stella. Like the actual physics and everything else occur less for Stella. You went on a journey and you were like time for us actually passed at regular intervals, but for you it was super fast because you were faster. It's like literally.
Was her assumption that she and Terra had equal claim to being inertial observers. To be an inertial observer, one has to maintain a constant speed and direction relative to the rest of the universe.
No. No. An inertial observer is anything going at whatever speeds. I don't.
Terra was at rest the entire time, so her velocity was a constant zero.
Relative to the speed of light, Kara was at rest. She was going the speed of the planet through the solar system, through the galaxy. That's a speed. Okay. So you understand that objects moving through space have to consider their own speed And you call that rest, but it's really not. You sitting in your chair right now, you're not resting. You think you're resting, but it's similar to being in a spaceship going at certain speeds. Imagine what would happen if you were to actually find a way to go inverse inverse direction of everything else. And I don't just mean like the rotation of the Earth. I mean the like somehow find a way so that you're not moving through the galaxy, through the entirety of space, and actually be at rest. Besides the fact that you would freeze, um, as most people think speed and temperature are related, which they are. Pull a Joe button and just quit the statement there.
But when Stella changed her direction for the return journey, she entered a different reference frame from the one she'd started in. Tara and Stella now both have a better understanding of how space-time works, and as twins who are 11 years apart in age, they're a perfect example of special relativity.
Yeah, unfortunately that does not happen. And it's not that it took me 4 years to be able to say this. It's that I basically probably made a reaction when this came out. My channel died in the early parts of 2023. So it took me like I eventually just had to make this video again. And so here we are. So imagine you have the entire society of science communicators and people actually were doing all the maths and everything, looking at this video and saying, this is all fact and this makes total sense. I'm looking at you. Why do you think that? Why are you so blind? Do the math again. Make your own reaction video talking about how time does not change in this manner. How the light signals have nothing to do with the changing of time. How Stella and Tara don't age at different rates, no matter how fast they're going. In fact, let me tell you something about that. Physics, you actually apply them. Going near the speed of light, that's Mach whatever. I don't know how fast is that in like actual speeds. I don't know. Give me a second. I gotta check it. Okay, we're clear. Um, the speed of light is 800,000 times the speed of sound. Speed of sound in air. Ironically, sound can move faster in a liquid, they say. So why wouldn't light also be able to move? Never mind. The point is, sound travels at the speed of 1,234 kilometers an hour, while light travels at this speed, kilometers an hour, 1 billion kilometers an hour. a billion. That checks out. I mean, the ratio is 800 and something. It's interesting that they chose 86% the speed of light when Mach speed. So interestingly, at Mach 10, you're already experiencing higher gravities that you can't stand. Imagine what's happening to your body at those speeds. It's being squished. I'm not saying that you would age faster going 800,000 times the speed of sound, or, oh, okay, 60,000 times the speed of sound, or whatever it is, that is 80% the speed of light. Not going to do that math. Don't care. Don't at me. The point is, it really doesn't make a difference. You're going to feel a lot of squishing on your body. And unless Stella was able to manipulate their velocity forward in such a way that negates all this force that is being experienced, how? I don't know. You're going to be squished and dead. Pretty much. How long would it take you to get squished and dead? Let's say that 1 second took place, you're already squished and dead. Going at that speed. Your bones are turned to powder after maybe 2 or 3 seconds. That ship doesn't exist. But that doesn't, or maybe the ship exists because it's made out of something stronger, but your bones, no, they can't handle that. Can you tell me what's going to happen to my bones? That elf stuck in the pool for like forever? He was just everlasting life, and then he's dead. And it's like, what's going to happen to my bones? Dungeons and Dragons reference. The point is, forgetting what would happen with your body and everything else. Let's say you just focus on a spaceship that is able to handle the speeds that you're talking about, which we don't have the ability to make yet, but let's say that it does happen. Time's still not going to run slower as far as the ship is concerned. And every year that passes, it is going to experience 0.86 light years of distance from the Earth towards that thing that they were traveling to. And the entire experience of this no. Just no. Besides the fact that you got the interval of how much distance per year of actual travel wrong somehow. I don't know how you did that, but you did it. The whole thing about what you would be experiencing, like, in the end, that doesn't even matter. There's this other theory. It has nothing to do with any of the thing I've just talked about. The warping of space-time. But that is the bending of space-time has to do with as you're getting closer to, let's say you have a gravitational well, right? You saw that Doctor Who episode where they go towards the black hole and the end of the ship is way far away from the black hole? Yeah, that kind of thing happens. Only thing is, time isn't incredibly manipulated in that scenario either. And if you were to, let's say, create something capable of making the forces that make the gravitational stuff happen, that does what you assume would be the curvature. I can't even talk in these terms because I don't believe in them, is how far detached I am from any of the science that you are so focused on, you think so much of, and yet is incorrect. So let's say it in their terms, because it's not mine. You have yourself that if you are near a gravitational force, the stronger amount of force, the more bending of space-time you should experience. But also your velocity makes for a certain amount of gravitational forces. But what they really are talking about, they end up talking about time dilation and things. And they say that your, let's say that you have warped space-time, right? And somehow you find a way so that a warped space-time makes time dilation so it goes not only slower, but it warps into itself so that the slowing, or eventually it twists into itself in such a way that it actually goes backwards in time. There's this idea that if you were able to have like maybe a couple of black holes or something, and the warping of space-time so drastic that going through the curved space, that it's able to be so curved that it would actually, once you go in one side and you come out the other side, you're going to end up seconds in the past. Because time dilation is so, the time is moving so slowly in these curved time-space things that you experience less and less time, that you actually somehow end up arriving before you left. Keep going through it, and you could end up arriving at a time that, sure, it took you a certain amount of time to get there, but the point is you're now traveling backwards in time. If the space-time folding stuff happens, if it's real, if it's something that can actually be done, then what you would experience is every time that you go through this warp, you're going to be moving a certain amount into the past. Go through it farther enough, obviously you're going to end up maybe hundreds of years in the past or whatever else, and you can do whatever you want once you get there. And it takes you the length of time it takes you to go through that loop. Now let's pretend that we have severely warped how much this works, and the loop basically turns into a kind of space-time wormhole that makes it so that you actually going through this, like let's say you have two black holes, they're really close to each other, they're held away from each other somehow. How? Yeah, but they are. Let's say that they are. You go, pretend that if you go between these two black holes and you come out the other side, you're automatically space-time warps so much in this weird scenario that you're actually like 10 years or whatever into the past, or a specific amount of years in the past, however far you want to go. Put it to more extremes, you end up further and further away into the distant past. The thing that I get stuck on is that when you are going certain speeds into, like, okay, the space-time doing its thing, curving space-time so that time dilates, you've manipulated that in such a grandiose amount that instead of having time go at a regular rate for you, time is going extra slow, to the point where instead of at zero, it's now reversed. Um, yeah, I mean, that was something I thought of being real back in the day. And at some point, I realized what actually is happening when you go near like a star or a planet or a black hole. What is happening is that objects aren't, the space-time isn't bending, but the objects themselves that are going near these massive things in space, their trajectory is being manipulated by the gravitational force that is given by the star, the planet, the black hole. So the amount of pull is basically because there is a buoyancy force, a buoyancy effect happening in any of these large mass objects. The light stuff is pulling on all the heavy stuff, just lifting up. And the light stuff is so energetic that it's able to bounce up, right? And the heavier stuff pull down. This makes an eddy current of heavy stuff being pulled down. Literally everything in the area is pulled along with it. The electromagnetic field is pulled along with it. In a star, you can tell that there are electromagnetic fields doing crazy things, but on the planet, you already know there are electromagnetic fields making a barrier between us and the rest of the stuff that's out in outer space. It's not hard to imagine that everything out there is all being affected by the electromagnetic fields that are already just literally everywhere in space, everywhere in existence, in space, on the planet, everywhere. So as you're traveling, you're going to experience these eddy currents flowing you towards whatever is the mass source that you're going towards. So if you're going towards a black hole, ironically, it's weird because the black hole is like said to be not an object, but it is like an empty space void that somehow also is like there is speed and everything happening there. It's an object that's not an object that's affecting everything else around it. It's like, huh? Crazy. You almost wonder if black holes are made by other objects, and they are like the result of other objects instead. I'm not gonna get into that. I can't even think of that being true because I don't think that's the truth. Um, the thing that bugs me so much about the whole idea of space-time curvature and that stuff that's happening, the whole experience of time dilation based on speed or based on gravitational forces, is that it's all based on how light is changed as things are moving and stuff. It really doesn't make sense. Um, I would love to talk to someone who has actually had proper experiments of moving an object near the speed of light, what actually physically is happening with those objects and all of that. But I could just look that up, right? Couldn't I? I'm sorry, I'm just... The original topic of this video is time dilation, as if I'm supposed to be convinced by something that I recently saw that's like, okay, you know what, actually time dilation does exist. That didn't happen. Clearly an animation could never do that for me, because even if people are believing this type of thing, that type of thing, the reaction, the um the animated space and the interactions of objects, you can get an understanding that makes sense, and it does work that way if you focus on it that way. And in cartoon world, we can think of anything, but this is supposed to be based on reality, or at least theories of reality. The hyperbolic space is like, yeah, it's a neat concept that if there is hyperbolic space, what's happening is that if you move a little bit, you're actually still like the fascinating thing that happened with where did I just go? Don't do that. Fascinating thing that happened in the video where yes, I know you're going to show me an advertisement. I don't want you to. Okay, so you get to this point where this hyperbolic space thing has been talked about all sorts of ways. Pause. And this is the reaction video, but whatever. The point is you can see it, and what's happening is that supposed to be a square that is pentagon? Anyway, the point is if you've seen it before, there's like a game that works with this circle here. And what you'll notice is that on the edges, that's the same space. And what's happening is what happens with lensing. So someone can be living in what their opinion is hyperbolic space, but is actually just normal space. And the difference is your lensing is so crazy, you can actually see everything that you're moving towards, sort of. To a certain degree, only it gets infinitesimally smaller as you go along. There's other things about it. It's neat. Some things and stuff. I need to move it. So, the other thing is the relationship to regular space. And clearly, like, it really doesn't matter what size you're working with, because you can easily just go on to say, and of course I told them, but time doesn't actually dilate. And in the actual video, my comment was, but space doesn't actually bend. Where the hell am I? Please let me move in a normal way. Thank you. Space-time doesn't actually bend. But love the video. I'm trying. I'm really hoping that somehow someone ends up understanding about how space-time works. So, other conclusions, what does this have to do with, and what is the impact on time travel? Well, the answer is going at certain speeds, going at certain gravitational forces, you're not going to actually be moving at any different rate into time. Take it to the extreme, you're not going to actually go backwards in time, because time isn't what's being manipulated. There are simply just other things that are taking place. There's a reason why spooky action at a distance, Einstein said hidden variables, and the hidden variable is actually not hidden. When you have the other thing about entangled particles, which has nothing to do with what we've been talking about thus far, I'm saying it anyway, is that you're hitting light against an object that you know is going to divide that light. Is it light or is it the same? And it's going to send it half in one direction and half in the other direction. And once you get to that other direction, you're going to see that the light has either spin up or spin down, whatever. And this is relative to like an objects that are receiving them are like 100 meters away or whatever. This this the experiment that they tried to do, the amount of times that they tried the experiment, the amount of discrepancy and the shake and wobble, and then the consideration of all these things. I don't know how to tell you this. What is that time? Freaking entanglement theory. Entanglement experiment. Um, Biggest cosmic mystery is like another whole thing. I shouldn't get into every topic of science in one video because it makes the video too long. It drops it from the original experiment to, or the original like thing I set out to talk about, into like so many other things. And it's this entire lecture that's like been going on for an hour now and already diverted like 3 different ways into other fields of physics. And I don't have patience for it anymore. Thing about entanglement, they didn't prove causality whatsoever. The experiment was supposed to prove that yes, there is a correlation between the particle you see on one side detector and the other side detector, photon of light or whatever else, that you shot a specific thing, I think it was calcium, to divide it specifically in half. And I'm like, yeah, you divided it specifically in half. And what happens is you end up with something that's specifically divided like a baseball. You divide it in half, and the motion of that object, one object moving in one direction, one object moving in the other direction, and they're going to have opposite forms. If you think of it as a particle, you should understand that whatever parts that were on the one half will be doing one thing, and the other ones, the other half, will be doing the 180 of that. One will have spin up and the other one will have spin down, or whatever. This is a physical transformation of the particle. It makes total sense. So once you do that split in half, if the particle was symmetrical, it's just like a baseball in its shape. So then you should understand that when it reaches your detector on the one side and the other side, the one side will be seen as doing its thing, the other side will be seen as doing its thing, and if you were to look at them as if straight down, from where they came from to where they end up, would they not look like the same object? Or opposite objects? Don't feel like that was explained very well. And point is, in order to prove entanglement, you're not just splitting an object and doing another thing. Whatever is happening on one side, you expect there to be a direct understanding correlation with the other side. These tiny particles, the size of electrons and whatever else, are moving at such speeds with their orbits and their spins that it's thousands of times per second or whatever. It's extremely fast. You try to pay attention to what's happening there, and you can lose track easy. What instant you saw it go up or spin down or whatever else, and then you try to say that there is whatever happens on this side did something to the other side. Unless you can actually make that into a communication device, and they say that you can't. They directly say you can't. That proves you can't actually make a signal happen with this. It proves you can't actually make some kind of faster than light transmission. Because true entanglement, if it existed, guess what? You can communicate using it. If your system is sensitive enough that it can understand that whatever's happening to that spin up, if it does automatically snap, and the other one also snaps to a spin up or spin down, whatever configuration, and then whatever happens to A directly affects what happens to B. Whenever you do something on one side, you're going to experience something happening on the other side. And if you do enough of those said particles, you end up with having a message that with enough variability, you're going to have, like, you need lots of particles in order to make a message. You can't just do it with one. But assuming that you got it correct and you got rid of all the other limiting factors, you would be able to send a message using entangled particles, if they're entangled in the first place. One of the problems with entangled particles is that it's an object, it's moving at speed, it has to be either bounced around or something, and how do you plan that ahead of time so that you can then, whatever you do, you have to figure out a way, once you've made the entangled pairs, if you can isolate them, like have one in a jar here and one in a jar there, then do something later, and then notice a change in the other one, no matter where it is, that's when you know you've proven entangled particles, and instantaneously you also have signals that you can transmit. And if you're going to have something like what you would do then, oh, you can't tell what happens when you look at this one and you look at that one? There should be a passive way of looking. And that would prove things also. The other thing is, if you're able to do it, you would trigger a certain number of these particles, let's say 3 of them, and then after that, you would also have the actual message. Don't do that. You would have the actual message that you want to send, which could be a simple Like the fact that all of these particles on the other side of wherever the hell they are, because of entanglement, they should all trigger at the same time. You should notice that, and you should be able to then pick up on all the rest of the particles that are supposed to be like... It's like with telegraphs. You would say start and stop, you know? So you would have a system like that. You would decode it on the one other side. You would literally want to have trillions of these particles, and then you could send like gigabytes of information eventually, especially if you make it so that it's encoded and it can be decoded in a way that is like consistent enough that you sent like a zip file or whatever. You could send a lot of information with whatever signal you would want to transmit. Entanglement should make that possible. The only thing is you need many entangled particles. You need them to all cascade at once. And that's just to send one thing in one-way transmission. Then, if you want to transmit another thing, you need an entire other packet of these particles. And the interesting thing is, it's a particle. The size of your jar can be the size of a grain of rice. You can have thousands of them in a cubic centimeter. No problem. 10 times 10 times 10 cubic centimeter, boom, done. That's not even good. That's not even a good explanation of how many particles you could possibly be storing and then trigger and then do things with. You realize you can have, like, particles are freaking tiny. So already looking at the amount of particles that you can look at and store in an area of volume, all these entangled particles, you then trigger each one of them individually, and then here's the thing, the real kicker: what if you can have multiple entangled particles that then share and transmit their entangledness to other particles, that then you have the connection via these secondary particles. The host particle doesn't change its, because everything that they said, when they have entangled particles, the moment that they look at them and they do that change, it automatically snaps that link. So what if you could have it so that the link is shared and spread out to other particles? Then you would have a host and you would have a lot of daughters particles or whatever, offspring particles that are like, these ones are the ones you actually do the signals with, and this is the one that you maintain the connection with, right? And then you would notice you would be able to actually not only have signals go from here to Mars instantaneously or to Pluto instantaneously, but also you could not just do that with a single packet of entangled particles, but you could repeatedly do that with the same set packet of entangled particles for sending one way, another packet for sending the other way. It would be simple. It's like Google Docs when you have a document that you're able to write on the document and then the other person is also able to write on the document. It's kind of like that, where you're able to put in your set parameters. All these particles are doing a specific thing. Like, imagine it. You have a grid of like a picture that you want to entangle into these particles. The on and off states, or the flip up or flip down states, you trigger them, it sends that image. And as long as the particles are in the correct order, in the other person's grid, you should immediately be able to see a display. As soon as they type their message, it shows up immediately on the other person's side, right? Send those same particles through a machine to reintegrate them into the entanglements, and they all flip, and then boom, you have another screen, a whole other thing, you can send your message. And then all you need is like whatever size picture you want to have. Videos, if you want to have them, if you have enough particles, like if you have millions and trillions of particles, you can easily start doing video grade communication using these entangled particles. You just need lots of them, and you need a way to re-entangle. The unfortunate thing is entanglement is a hoax. It doesn't work. It never will work. It's not even a thing. It's a coincidence. And it would be great to be able to have that instant transmission to wherever you want, no matter how far. It doesn't even have to be like through the solar system. Just having entanglement transmissions would make it so that the ping from one side of the planet to the other side of the planet would not be 100 whatever, but it would actually be instantaneous. Imagine having the ability to communicate instantaneously anywhere in the world, right? Like there's a reason why we have, like, what is it? Certain amount of ping, a certain amount of lag and stuff. You start working with enough particles that you're working with billions and quadrillions of these entangled particles, you can have the World Wide Web all experience the same thing instantaneously everywhere because everyone has the same transmission. Everyone has the same entangled pairs sets that is just everywhere. Of course, that's only good for the problem. Then what happens is if everyone has the same transmissions, like it's like saying the entire internet is available to everyone at all times, including like any bits of information that you would ever want. So like, is that good? Is there a way to isolate that so that it's not something? You realize you can make individual connection links and they are only able to connect to each other. So like, let's say you want to have a banking transaction happen. That information would only go to wherever it's going and nowhere else. It's like it's like having a direct wire go from your bank to the financial transaction hub. And there's literally nowhere else it can go. There's no way to intersect the wire because it's just this instant transmission quantum entanglement thing. So there's no way that anyone would be able to hack into this system. You would have to be there to get in the first place, right? So the only way that you would be able to make it into a World Wide Web thing is that you were to have certain packets be linked to certain places and all these things. You would need so many packets everywhere. It's insane. The internet with entangled particles is so vast, you would need stars of particles to work for the sake of transmitting something like Google, like YouTube. Of course, the thing about YouTube is that, and it's interesting, it's like a direct connection to a different computer system. So it's like you're hosting, yeah, it's another thing. You can host the games wherever you want and whatever thing. It's neat. It has some promise to it, if only entangled particles existed. Because you would still have to understand and explain and know about the entangledness and how all of that worked. People said that they did an experiment talking about they had 7 entangled particles and it made so you have 7 entangled pairs. Each one of them made like the outline of a ring and another ring on the other side. They're lined up with each other, and what they did was they take a particle and they shot it from one side through the ring, hopefully having it go to the other side. And first question, did that particle instantaneously transmit, not traversing the air gap between the 2 rings? I don't think so. Because literally, you wouldn't need a ring in order to make the instant transmission if the transmission would happen at all. Like once you touch the theory is once you touch one particle to the other particle, then it teleports to the endpoint, taking like no time to transmit matter, not just signals, matter. That's crazy. The idea of using that in its fullest extent to try to transmit a person, impossible. Outrageously ridiculous to consider. Imagine that you got, let's say you have this like Stargate like this liquid where it's suspended there and then you touch this stuff and then by touching it you trigger a entanglement warping instantaneously of a part of yourself to the next space. Guess what happens if you don't move all of your particles at the same time or in cascading sequence such that you are completely disintegrated on this side and reintegrated on the other side. Like this, let's say that there's a hiccup in any of that. You end up sliced with, if let's say you just stop and then pull back. Like you put your arm in and then you pull it back. That arm's already transmitted. So don't do that because your arm is gone. And suddenly your arm is just dead on the floor. Or like half your face. Or whatever. That's what quantum entanglement teleportation with person done incorrectly is like. And it's not fun. You don't want to do it. So don't experiment like that. That's not okay. Don't even try doing that. That is ridiculous. Even so, if there is quantum entanglement and blah blah blah, and if there's quantum teleportation with this stuff, that you could make this kind of thing happen, quantum entangled induced teleportation, it doesn't work with a person. It doesn't even work well with electronics. Electronics, you could end up with tiny gaps between your circuits. The entire thing could just be a dead circuit board. You got to rebuild it from the ground up once you get it there. Well, that's why they have a pattern, and they disassemble and they reassemble wherever they put it. The interesting thing about Star Trek teleporters is that you're just beaming someone. You're just trajectoring that thing into the other space where you assume you want it to land. I never thought to consider the space was a thing that was moving. Pretty much. Yeah. The thing about quantum entanglement teleportation is just it's not a good idea. The other thing, the only good way to move through space is hyperspace, where everything else with you is moving at a high speed such that somehow you're also in like this other dimension of space, which for all intents and purposes we understand does not exist. So like there's no way to actually make a hyperspace, right? That whole idea of having stuff that's moving faster integrated alongside the same three-dimensional space that we already occupy, kind of like if it could happen, it's probably the best way to do it. You just walk into this window, you suddenly are just jolted forward. Again, in that way, it's like being caught in a tidal wave or caught inside of a current, and you would just be pulled forward. You maybe experience G-forces, but because everything's moving, you're still going to experience G-forces. I don't know how to make it so that craziness is able to happen, and you're going at warp speeds, super um, um, faster than regular motions, but not experiencing gravitational forces, not experiencing the G-forces like you do in a plane. Like, even Einstein said, if you're going on a ship going the speed of the Earth and you are on the Earth, you don't experience any difference between the gravity that the forces against you and everything. Is just basically the same. You wouldn't tell the difference between you being on that ship and you being on Earth because there is no difference. That's what they say. Truth is that checks out. It's one thing that checks out. And it's fun because it means that, yeah, the faster you go, the more pressure your body is going to experience and everything. I don't know. I'll talk about our science stuff later. Why am I going Spotify? Toodles!